How's everybody doing?
The good part about doing it after coffee is nobody's sleepy. So it's everybody's paying rapt attention. Well, thank you for joining us today. You obviously run one of the coolest search companies around, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But we all use search, and I use search every day, and we all default to using the search we know, which is Google search, which has become kind of ubiquitous for everything you want to do, right? You're looking for a restaurant, which we talked about earlier, or you're looking to buy whatever you want from a merchandise perspective. That's where you go. You want to do some research, that's where you go. That's kind of become the default. But you started Exa 4 years ago now, and the premise was that the search as it exists today has really not evolved since 1998 when it was launched. And your whole premise was that everybody deserves a better search experience. And I think we've talked a lot about AI agents today and how they power search and why it can fundamentally change the way we have an experience of interacting with the information that's available on the web and how that can become much more effective in that usage. So question for you, I guess, is why do you think search didn't evolve for all these years? Why do you think we stayed stagnant for what seems like forever, right? 25 plus years, and got used to using what today we are viewing as potentially substandard search?
Yeah, that's the question right now. So first of all, thank you for organizing this event. This is very cool, and we are on the forefront of this question. But yeah, it's been a long journey it's been 4.5 years almost, and the mission of Exa has always been the same, which is perfect search. And this is like the fundamental question, like what is wrong with search? Most people think that search is solved, or at least they used to. I think when ChatGPT came out, people were like, wait a sec, Google seems really outdated now. But 4.5 years ago, Google seemed great. And I think the problem is that everyone uses Google so much, and it is so effective at so many of our workflows every day. And it almost like, it makes, Google and search are kind of synonymous. And it's very hard for us humans to like, pry ourselves out of that old world. And I think, so if you look at the history of search, like Google came out in 1998, at the time it was magical because like there were search engines before Google, and Google's big innovation was the PageRank algorithm, and that allowed you, when you search for like, Alaska or something, you wouldn't just get random documents on the web that contain the word Alaska, you would get the most popular, most relevant results that contain the word Alaska. And that was a magical thing, to search Alaska and get magical results. But it's been over 2 decades since then, and the world has evolved, and now our needs are a lot more complex. And so maybe the easiest way to see how Google is limited is just through examples. So for example, like we are doing a lot of recruiting at Exa. I want to find engineers who've worked on search before. If you search that on Google, you do not get a list of engineers who've worked on search before. You get like, I don't know, like random articles, like Reddit posts. It's just like not actually returning what you're asking for. And so when you think about it, there are actually like tons of searches like this, whether you're looking for companies or research papers or apartments. I was just looking for an apartment for like 80 days. That's probably more a me problem than a search problem. But like, there's so many different types of searches that you can't do, and people are starting to realize that. But yeah, I think it's actually really hard to, again, even pry ourselves out of this. Even if I say these words right now, you still think Google is fine. I think another way of looking at it is Google is very good for consumer search. So they serve 2 billion humans, and they train a lot of their algorithm based on click data. So when you type in some simple search, they're very good at like understanding your vague query. But now when you're serving businesses with all these new types of use cases, whether it's like, hey, give me like a market map of biotech companies, or recruiting, or like I'm a researcher and I want to find like every possible research setup that's similar to my research setup, like you start to see the limits.
That's a very interesting point, right? I mean, what you're essentially saying is that we have been consuming keyword search for a very long time. And there's a whole set of businesses and incentive programs that have been built around that, an ecosystem around it that's made that the predominant way. But that's not really how we consume information. There's a lot of things that we have to do, like you looking for an apartment. Could be a search problem because maybe the information is not easy enough for you to consume. So if you were to describe perfect search, whether it's for consumer or for research purposes, in your vision, what would that be?
Yeah, okay, so the technical way of saying this is just like, perfect search means no matter how complex the information request, you get exactly that information. So that's like the technical definition. But then like peeling that apart, it means that like, it really should feel like the web and really all the world's information is a database that you could filter however you want. So kind of like if you ever played with a SQL table, and you search something in your SQL table, and you get a list of results, and you kind of like, you get all the results that match. And imagine that, but over all the world's information, and you could not just use like keywords, but like any semantic search. So again, like sticking with the recruiting example, find me all engineers in San Francisco who've worked on search before, who've recently written a blog about AI. Like that feels like a SQL query, right? So and then you get like all 134 people who have done that. Like that would be a magical experience. And then you change it to like, oh, not San Francisco, but actually New York. And then you get 205 people. And so it's like the world's information is this like database. You can filter however you want. This is very different from Google. You know how Google sometimes they say like you search like I don't know biotech startups and it'll say like 30 million results at the top. Like I promise you, there are not 30 million biotech startups. What they're showing you is just a number of documents that contain the word biotech startups. Like that's not at all what you're looking for. So yeah, a big part of Perfect Search is the world's information feeling like a database you can filter however you want. Perfect Search, but goes beyond that. So there are other things that like, Perfect Search for certain customers is like super fast search. Maybe they just want like Google level search, but like 100 milliseconds instead of like instead of 500 milliseconds. So, or some people want like, hey, remove all misinformation or any AI generated content. So customizability is a big part of Perfect Search, but there's a lot of angles.
There is definitely a lot of angles to it. Now, you recently launched Exa 2.0. That has some of what you're talking about, which is the millisecond search, which is straight to the point, but it also has search that takes a tremendously long amount of time because it's doing complex thinking and maybe finding you your perfect apartment while you're sleeping. Yes. But there's a wide variety of options. How and when and why would people choose one over the other? How should people think about these different things when they're trying to build real-world applications? Yeah.
It's a great question. One weird thing about search, at least like Google search, is that it takes the same amount of time every search. So whether you're searching for like Taylor Swift, which is a simple query, or like every proposed solution to the Riemann hypothesis on British forums from 2000 to 2010, that will also take the same amount of time as Taylor Swift. That's insane. That's actually an error. That's a mistake. Like not all searches are made equal. So some searches should be super fast, like actually faster than Google. You should be able to get like 100 millisecond, 50 millisecond, even like 30 millisecond search, which I'm really excited about. Or sometimes searches should take 10 minutes to find all the possible solutions to the Riemann hypothesis. So at Exa, we've always had that in mind, that like search is a spectrum of compute needs, and we want to serve, a perfect search is serving every possible search on that spectrum. So for certain applications, if you do the best possible results, but it takes 10 minutes, that's terrible. For others, like recruiting, I'm totally fine like typing in my search, going to get a cup of coffee, coming back, and having a perfect list of people.
Yeah, so for people who are building agentic AI applications, which seems to be the flavor of the day, and everything we're talking about is about agents doing work on behalf of people, search becomes an irreplaceable part of what they need to do to make that successful. So how would they think about using these different options that you have at Exa, and how would they structure something that is not single-dimensional, right? So people will want to do things which are in both those domains of super fast and super complex searches.
Yeah, so really it's like for our customers, if they have a latency-sensitive application, a chat bot, or in the most extreme case, like a voice app, where like if you think about it, if you're doing a search inside a voice app, you're talking to your AI, it needs to do like any millisecond you shave off matters, which is very different from consumer search. So they want like the lowest, like give me the lowest possible search ever, and we might need to like deploy it in their own like cloud so that it's as fast as possible. But then some customers have like asynchronous things that they're running overnight, and so they just want the highest quality, and they don't care how long it takes. And so it really just comes down to like what type of product are you building? Is it synchronous? Is it asynchronous? If it's synchronous, what kind of trade-off of quality and latency are you down for? Yeah.
So in your mind, when you're talking to your customers and they're coming to you with these issues, and when you look at the web and you look at it as the biggest database of information available, what strategies do you use to engage with your customers? How do you advise them on what is the ideal way to build their agents? What is the most efficient way to access information?
Oh, often they're the experts on that. But I could tell them that, so I would say just an interesting point there is like, there's been this interesting like question of like, where does their product end and ours begin? So like, we could call searches agentically in our search engine, or they could call it on their side. And some customers are more sophisticated and they want just the raw search, like they don't want any agentic stuff on top. And other customers, typically non-SF, will want you to build like an end-to-end solution. So that's like one interesting thing. So we like, depending on the sophistication of the customer, we could like evaluate what kind of
You actually will help them build the right solution based on what their use case would be. Let's switch topics for a little bit. So there's also a lot of misinformation on the web, right? And part of the perfect search is not just finding information, but finding the right information and finding real information. And it almost, in today's world, with everybody creating content at an amazing rate, differentiating that and making sure that the search results are what it needs to be becomes super important. So how important is that to Exa? How do you do that? And what's your approach to that?
Yes, this is an extremely important problem. I think it also gets at like why perfect search is important. I'm not just building perfect search because like it's good business, which I do think it is, but I think I think it's extremely important for the world. I believe it's the most important neglected problem in the world. If you think about the number of people thinking about like AI, it's probably hundreds of thousands, millions of people at this point. How many people are thinking about perfect search? It might be like the number of people in this room. But it's extremely important because like if you think about it, so this relates to misinformation. It's like every decision in our society, like every political opinion you have, it all comes through your phone or your computer, like through the information you consume. And so information is like essential civilizational infrastructure. And it informs our politics, our scientific progress, just our daily perceptions of the world. And our current tools for getting that information are extremely limited. So if you think about it, we kind of have social media, which is based on ads and has a ton of misinformation. We have like search engines like Google, which is based on ads, has less misinformation, but still has some. Then we have like the news, which is based on social media and those search engines, and a little bit of like on the ground stuff. And then it has all those weird incentives too. And so like actually like the tools we use to get our information are extremely biased and limited. And it's kind of terrible for such an important civilizational infrastructure. It's kind of like, I see it as like the same importance as like electricity and water. Imagine if all our water was corrupted by ads or something. So anyway, so misinformation is a big part of this, and so it's getting worse, the problem. So just because it's easy to like generate information. So like if you search like Scarlett Johansson now, or Taylor, I don't know why I keep using these examples, but like you search like Brad Pitt or Scarlett Johansson or like I don't know, like my information about a war, you will not get only correct results. You will get like now like 10%, 20% misinformation. You actually don't know. It's very hard to know what's true. You get AI generated images now. And so it's a really hard problem. I think there are solutions. It's like a cat and mouse game. Like we'll build AI classification tools that are really good, and then if we're big enough, people will try to be adversarial and build things that get around those. And so, but it's very important that there are players in the space like us that have very aligned incentives. We don't make money from ads, that are trying to solve this problem too. I'll just say one interesting thing about another thing about misinformation is like there are actually two kinds of misinformation I see. One is like incorrect content that people put out, but another type of misinformation is just a bad search algorithm. Because like if all the information on the web were correct, but your search algorithm is bad or limited or can only handle keywords, then you're actually being misinformed about the world. And so what you really want is a perfect search engine that like you search about like information about some war. Okay, information about some war that's from a Republican perspective. Okay, information about some war that's from a Democratic perspective. Information about some war from a Republican perspective that has, like a certain type of quality. Like, if you could make those types of searches and you knew it was like accurately presenting all the information in the world to you, we would be a much more informed society. So misinformation, it comes in two flavors.
No, that's great. And taking the bias out of information and making sure that it's factual and reported in real time is super important. And there's a couple of things I heard today that I want to ask you about. One, I heard about this concept of long-running searches, people wanting to know things over periods of time and wanting to track information over periods of time, and things which are not just things you're looking for a result now, but things more which are the next evolution of search, if you want to look like. So the search we know today gives us information, maybe gives us better information, but how do you see those new and different kind of use cases? How does this paradigm move into the future?
Like log running, like searching over data that, like pricing changes on a company website or something?
Yeah, it could be pricing changes on a company website. It could be tracking topics for a long term. It could be, because today with agents, you can do things on your behalf, which you had to wake up maybe every week and do over and over again as repetitive tasks. So you could do things for them, and that could be a long-running thing in the background, right? How do you approach things like that?
I think right now, first of all, perfect search encompasses everything. So I think like the ability to analyze, for example, pricing pages on a website or trends is extremely important. I think that would require like constantly recrawling the web to do like perfectly, which is expensive and stuff like that. So it's like as a startup with limited resources, we have to think about the most important problems. And like right now, I think there's so much low-hanging fruit of just like, I need information from my AI. Like, why can't I get that in a way that's like fast and cheap and reasonable and stuff like that? But certainly, as we and others solve those problems, there will be more increasingly complex needs for these AI agents. And I think that's a really interesting point, which is that like with humans, it's like Google search is enough. But with agents, we're gonna make Google level search, and that's not enough. And then we're gonna make like way better search that has long running tasks, and that's not enough. They want more and more and more, particularly because we're serving business needs, and businesses run on alpha. And if you could like make way better search, you're gonna make a lot more money. So it's like the better your search, the more money you make. It's different from consumer search, which is more like the better you get people to click on your ads, the more money you make, which is misaligned with like perfect search. Yeah.
Oh, makes total sense. Do you also see your product being used internal to companies, or you just see this as a consumer, people building agentic AI for consumers? How do you see that, and how do you see that information that exists within enterprises merging with information that exists outside of enterprises into a single search paradigm?
Yeah, I mean, we currently serve the public web, which is like more than enough of a hard problem right now. I think if you do that extremely well, it's a great business. Yeah, but I mean, we're interested in all the world's information. Like any sort of information can be helpful in making a very good search. That's a part of perfect search, by the way. A huge part of this is gathering the data. Bryk data definitely is aware of this. Like the more data you have access to, the more insights you could have. But even with just the public, so I think like the scale of things is insane. Like I think people just like don't realize like the web is massive, and the number of insights that are on there with just the currently publicly available data, no walled gardens or anything, is probably like 100x bigger than the current insights we currently have. So for example, like particularly in like data-hungry fields. So for example, in like history, like I would bet that the number of insights that historians have made based on the currently available information on the web and things that have been gathered is like 1/10 or 1/100th of what would be found if we had like GPT-5, so current AI, with perfect search. So it's like even with just the publicly available information, there's a ton of value.
That's awesome. What are your biggest constraints today for your business? We've heard a lot. We heard from Parag how search takes compute and more compute, and that's one of the things that everybody talks about. But if you were to give your perspective on what's the constraints that's allowing you or not allowing you to go as fast as you want, right? Whether it's business or it's infrastructure, what would you say it is?
I mean, I think any CEO would say recruiting. It's like, if anyone is watching this and wants to work on perfect search, like we are definitely hiring. You just need the best people to build this kind of thing. I think that is the most important input. Everything else will follow. As long as we have a world-class team, like I think we're going to do amazing things. I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but that is the true answer.
No, that's always a critical component of it. I mean, I was more looking for actual, like, do you see a constraint in terms of the information that needs to be available for you in real time? Do you see a constraint in terms of the information you need to have an index? What are the practical constraints that you see? Because it's not cheap to build this, and it's not easy to build this. So when you're doing this day to day, what are the constraints that you see?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting. Like, so building this company for years, like you start with very little money, and then you get a little bit more money and like a seed, and then at Series A, and then now with Series B we have more money. And so at each stage we were building the search engine, like the best possible search engine that we could with those resources. And so you have to be clever. Like we did not crawl the whole web when we were small. It didn't make sense. And you could get a lot of value from crawling a subset of the web. If you're clever about it, you actually don't need the whole web. And particularly with AI agents, they don't even want the whole web. It's like most of it is crap. We've always been clever about how we use our resources. I would say the most important things are, yes, gathering the most important data and developing the most powerful algorithms over it. I'd say more so than other companies, we are very focused on the retrieval algorithm because like I believe that embeddings like neural approaches to search are super underexplored, and we could do like a way better job as a species or also as a company of like being able to handle any type of semantic search. Like all the searches that we talked about, you should be able to handle them. Like one way of thinking about it is like we now have AIs that could do PhD level physics, and yet when you ask search engines like Google like shirts without stripes, you'll get shirts with stripes. Like, that's insane to me. And we should be walking around frustrated at the state of search. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, why can't we find all the engineers in San Francisco who've written blogs about AI? That is not that hard. Okay, it is hard, obviously, or else we'd have it. But my point is that it's clearly possible. And one way to think about it is like, if you spent $1 million running GPT-5 over the whole web, asking, are you an engineer in San Francisco who's written a blog about AI? Yes or no? And then you did that over like 1 trillion pages. That would be a great search engine. It would cost you like $10 million per search. So it's really an optimization problem at that point. Like, how do we pre-process the web into embeddings and various other things such that we can make those searches as optimally as possible? Yeah.
That's awesome. I think we're at time, but we look forward to what you're going to be building in the future, and we're excited.
All right, me too. Thank you.
Thanks, man.